What happens when a girl who grew up without a family is kicked out of a train station in front of everyone? She didn't scream or beg. She just stood there with her bag and a piece of paper. What the old man in line did changed her life forever. Elena sat on a wooden bench, her legs tucked under her. The seat was cold and uneven, and something unpleasant creaked beneath her, as if an old nail, long forgotten and neglected, was stuck inside the bench. A gray sky hung over the platform, not stormy, not cloudy, just indifferent. The wind blew as if it were at home, grabbing her scarf, her hair, her sleeves, as if trying to remind her that no one wanted her here. Next to her stood a bag that had seen a lot, with a worn strap tied with string. Inside was everything she had: a change of clothes, a couple of photographs, an unstamped letter, and a yellowed piece of paper with an address. Elena held it with both hands, like a shield. Everything that remained of her past fit between the two zippers. A man coughed loudly nearby. He was fat, with a red face and a security vest. He glanced at her askance, as if she were a stray dog. An elderly woman with a basket passed behind her, a chicken's tail sticking out from under a rag. The woman snorted. "Look at her sitting there. That's all they know how to do." And she walked on, as if she had spat in the dust. Elena didn't turn her head. She had heard it too many times. At the last stop, and the one before that. It was as if she had "Nobody wants you" written on her forehead. She just clenched her fingers tighter. The skin on her knuckles turned white. Her gesture was almost imperceptible. But one person saw it. An old man was sitting on the bench next to her. He wore a hat pulled down over his ears and a coat that smelled of old tobacco and the railroad. He wasn't looking away like everyone else, but straight at her. Not rudely, not pityingly, just looking. And Elena, accidentally catching his gaze, shuddered. She looked away. It was too dangerous to look into the face of someone who might want to know what was inside you, especially if you didn't know yourself. The platform shook as the train approached. The lights flashed. The station loudspeaker crackled, cleared its throat, and announced the arrival of the train. People began to move. Some coughed. Some rushed to the edge, shouting at their children. Elena did not get up. She wasn't going to see anyone in particular. She had no family, only a name on a scrap of paper. A name she repeated to herself like a prayer. Clara. Sister, you must be somewhere. But every time she tried to get closer to her past, everything went wrong. No one recognized her. They chased her away. They called her anything but who she felt she was. Today was the third city in a week, and the third time she found herself on a platform, alone, surrounded by people whose eyes showed nothing but exhaustion. "Miss," the guard's footsteps sounded heavy, like a sentence. "This isn't a shelter. You're not a passenger. Make room." "I'm waiting," she exhaled. "I'm waiting for someone." Everyone is waiting for something. This isn't a place for tears. He reached out as if to touch her bag. At that moment, Elena stood up abruptly. Her shoulders were slumped, her eyes were dry, but her voice trembled. "I'm not asking for a penny. I was told she might be here. I'm looking for her. She's not here. Clear the area," he snapped. "This isn't a shelter." Someone applauded behind her. Someone laughed. Someone added, "Yeah, everyone has sisters in every city." Elena didn't know where to look. Somewhere out there, at the edge of the station, the light was fading. Inside, everything was collapsing, even the shards of hope she had held on to. And then, as if in another time, at a different pace, at his own speed, the old man stood up. Slowly, leaning on his cane, breathing heavily. His coat creaked like the door of an old house. He didn't say a word. He just walked over and stood next to Elena. "I'm with her," he said at last. "She's mine." And everything froze. What happened next changed everything. You won't want to miss how it unfolded, because this story isn't about a train station. It's about what makes us a family, even if we're not related. They sat in silence. The platform was empty. The train had left, and with it, the stares, laughter, and spitting. All that remained were the husks of sunflower seeds, and this strange evening in which everything sounded too loud. Breathing, the rustling of paper, the trembling of a teaspoon in a glass. Elena sat with her back straight, as if held by invisible threads. In one hand, she held a glass of cloudy liquid. In the other, a piece of paper, already almost worn away from being rubbed. She didn't look at the old man, just listened to him breathe. The sound of his cane still echoed inside her. He was silent for a long time, but not because he was thinking. He simply knew how to be silent. The kind of silence where a person can breathe without defending themselves. And then he said, without addressing anyone in particular, "People aren't persecuted for no reason. Sometimes it's because they're ashamed. Not of you, of themselves." He took a sip of tea and grimaced, as if he were chewing on nails. "You're one of those who don't lie. People don't like those. They're afraid of them." Elena turned her head slightly. He spoke for the first time and hit the mark. Too accurately, too quickly. "I'm not accusing anyone," she said quietly. I want to know who I am. I know I have a sister. We were separated as children. She was left behind. And She didn't finish. Her lips trembled, but her eyes remained dry. She had long since given up on tears. He nodded as if she didn't need to continue. Then he rubbed his cheek with his palm. His stubble crunched under his fingers like dry leaves. "You've always been too soft. That's why they walk all over you." The phrase hung between them like a curtain that no one was going to lift. Simple as a boot. Straight as a slap in the face. There was no malice in it. But it was a diagnosis. Elena fell silent. Not because she was offended. Because she recognized in those words what she had once heard from a teacher at the orphanage. "You don't know how to get angry. That's why you cry. Learn to spit. Maybe they'll stop kicking you." But back then she had rejected it. Like you deny an illness until you collapse. What if I don't want to change? If I just want to be human? Human? The old man sneered. Is that when they lie to you politely and smile while you're drowning? He finished his tea, put the glass down, and the ringing sound of metal against metal spread like a hammer blow. Elena slowly put the piece of paper back in her bag. The person who had written that address probably no longer existed. All that remained was a woman she had never seen. Clara, her sister. "I just want someone to say to me, 'I remember you.' That's all. I don't need anything else." Her voice was steady. Only her fingers clenched too tightly on the strap of her bag. The old man stood up. He paused. Then he said, almost in a whisper, as if in church, "You're not weak. You're just alone. And being alone isn't the same as being helpless." Those words didn't just enter her ears, they entered her soul. It was as if someone had allowed her for the first time to not feel guilty for her loneliness. Elena watched him walk away, just as she had watched other families through the window as a child. Not because she envied them, but because she wanted to know. Was this real, or just a nice lie? She remained on the bench, and thoughts began to stir inside her. For the first time, they were not about escape. They were about returning. Not home. She never had a home. But to herself. This is the culmination. Everything you've been waiting for is right here. It will be more painful, more honest, and stronger. Because she will do what she has been afraid of her whole life. Elena woke up to the smell of tobacco. Not cheap cigarettes, like in a flophouse, but warm and tart, from a pipe which smelled of books, dust, and old men whose eyes reflected wars, but not death. She didn't immediately realize where she was. The room was low, with a peeling ceiling and walls covered with long, faded flowers. In the corner was a cupboard, with a door falling off, on which stood a frame with a photograph of a woman in a headscarf. On the table by the window was a jar of jam and some bread, cut crookedly. It wasn't cozy, but it wasn't scary either. There was no smell of danger here. It smelled of old losses. An old man sat on a chair with his back to her, reading something, not a newspaper. Something handwritten. When she moved, he just said, "There's water. Wash yourself. The towel is behind the door. Coffee. If you find sugar, it'll be almost drinkable." She stood up slowly, as if afraid of waking the room. The sink was in the hallway. Next to it was a crooked mirror with a cloudy surface. Elena looked at her reflection and, as always, didn't recognize herself. Her face was plain and pale, her nose slightly weather-beaten, her hair disheveled. Neither beautiful nor ugly. A face you wouldn't want to remember. It was easier not to notice it. "I look like someone who isn't even needed by themselves," she muttered, wiping her face. In the kitchen, the old man was already pouring boiling water into thick glasses. "No sugar," he said. "But at least the coffee is old. That's something." "Thank you," she said, sitting down opposite him. "For what?" "For not kicking me out yesterday." He shrugged. "I just saw that you're not the type to ask, and those who don't ask are usually the ones who need it most." Then he added, as if to himself, "Sometimes I help so I don't have to beat myself up. Otherwise, my conscience would eat me alive." She smiled, for the first time, unintentionally, sarcastically. "You have a harsh style of charity, and you have a harsh style of living, so we're a good match." They fell silent. They ate breakfast. It felt as if they were both sitting on the edge of a cliff and had only met by chance on this rock, each for their own reasons. "What are you looking for, honestly?" he asked. "Your sister?" She nodded. "I don't have a photo of her, just a name and an address that someone wrote on the back of a discharge form. They said she was 6 when we were separated. I was 2. She's the older one. They left her with that family. They gave me away." "Gave you away," he repeated, trying the words like medicine, like a bad purchase. Almost. There was something about money, about illness. "I'm not angry. I just want to know. Who is she? Is she alive? Does she remember?" He nodded, slowly. What if she doesn't remember? Elena froze. That question was the worst, not because it was unexpected, but because it had been living in her head for too long. Then, at least I'll know I tried. They were silent for a long time. She could hear someone drop a bucket behind the wall, then swear, then laugh. The unfamiliar sounds were proof that the world was moving on, not waiting for those left behind on the bench. After breakfast, she carefully cleared the dishes, as if she didn't want to disturb anyone in the house. The old man said, "I'm going to the depot. I'm a retired conductor. Sometimes I help out with paperwork and cargo. If you want, go there. Maybe you'll find something in the archives. People change over the decades, but paper doesn't lie." "Can I?" "Yes, you can. Just don't ask for anything. Just go." And she went, in a coat that was too big for her, with a bag in which her dream had shrunk to a scrap of paper. On the way, she remembered how they told her in the orphanage, "You have no family, only the state." But the state didn't hug her, and this old man gave her a cup of coffee, Sometimes that's more than a whole childhood. She didn't know if she would find anything, but for the first time in a long time, she was walking towards something, not away from it. The depot looked like an old ship washed ashore. It was a long building with peeling paint and windows behind which people didn't live, only papers. Everything smelled of dust, oil, and time. Two men in uniform jackets stood near the entrance, discussing something quietly, as if it were forbidden to speak loudly in this place. Elena stopped at the threshold. Her shoulders were tense, her breathing steady, but something was trembling inside her. Not fear, but memories that had not yet arrived, but were already coming. "Young lady, who are you here to see?" she was called. She looked back. A man of about 50, wearing a cap, with hands like logs. His voice was not rude, but not inviting either. "I'm looking for someone. I was told that there might be lists of old families who left with their children more than 20 years ago. Are you with the authorities?" "Number I'm just passing by," he grimaced. "This isn't an information bureau." She was about to turn away. She knew that tone, that way of turning away. But the door in the hallway creaked, and a second man appeared, thin, gray-haired, wearing glasses held together with string. "Let her in. I'll help." He looked her straight in the face, not at her chest or her feet, as if there was something about her that was worth looking at. Elena went inside. The room she was led into resembled a long-forgotten library. Folders, stacks of papers, boxes labeled family affairs, resettlement archives, child distribution. "Name?" he asked, opening a notebook. "Clara. I don't know my last name. Just my first name. I may have been adopted, perhaps at the age of 6. He nodded, no longer surprised. "There are so many here." He didn't finish, just started leafing through the pages. The minutes passed slowly. Elena stood, not sitting down. She absorbed everything. The turning of the pages, his breathing, the crunch of the laminate under his shoes. All of this wasn't just sounds. It was proof that she could still search. Suddenly, he froze. "Here." He pointed to a line. The year, the name. The age was right. The station was the same. In the new family column was an address, and the names of adults, and a note in pencil. "Left in care." Elena read that line dozens of times without moving. It was as if each word was a splinter that needed to be embedded under her skin. Left. Not taken. And she was taken away. Could it be her? She asked. Possibly. By coincidence, yes. But we don't have any photos, only paper. He took out the sheet, carefully, as if it were a child. The address is old. The people may have moved. But we can try. Elena took the sheet with trembling hands. The address was 2 districts away. Not far, but it felt like the other side of life. Thank you. I didn't help. I just showed you. She left the archive with the piece of paper, as if it were a ticket to another reality. Her head was spinning. The ground seemed to sway beneath her feet. Not from fear. From the fact that hope had become too real, and now it could be shattered. On the way out, the first man, the gloomy one, glanced at her again. Found it then? She nodded. You won't be happy if you find it, he said, and turned away. She walked on, slowly, as if afraid to breathe. And suddenly she realized. This was the point of no return. The house at the old address stood in a side street, where the trees leaned toward each other, as if whispering behind the backs of passers-by. The letters on the number plate were peeling, the porch was crooked, and the curtains in the windows were yellow, like tea left in a cup. Elena stood at the gate as if facing someone else's past. The piece of paper in her hand was wet from her palm. She read the address over and over again, even though she knew it by heart. It was as if repeating it would slow her heartbeat. A maple tree swayed in front of her, its leaves falling slowly, one by one. She sat down on a bench by the fence, put her bag next to her, and stared into the void. "What are you going to say?" she muttered. "Hi, I'm the one you gave away. Or maybe, I don't know who you are, but we could have been a family if it weren't for the system and the stupidity of adults." The bench was cold, like the morning after a funeral. A dog barked behind the fence. Someone slammed a door in the distance. Everything sounded too loud, like on days when it's too quiet inside. She imagined the door opening, a woman appearing in the doorway, her reflection, only older, and saying, "Don't come closer. We have nothing to do with each other." Or, on the contrary, she would hug her, and then her carefully constructed world of pain would collapse because she would have to forgive. But what if no one lived there? "You're not ready," she whispered to herself. "You're not ready to hear that you've been forgotten. Not after you learned his name like a password. Not after you looked for him in every face. The old man said yesterday, 'You're not weak. You're just alone.'" And now she felt that being alone was easier than being rejected again. She stood up, walked over to the gate, touched the rusty iron with her finger, and immediately recoiled. It was as if she had touched not metal, but someone else's childhood. What are you waiting for? A miracle? Snot? A sister who will rush out in tears? She spoke to herself sternly, as a boarding school teacher would have spoken to her, or like the mother she didn't remember, but heard in her nightmares. She moved away from the gate and walked a little way down the alley, as if she wanted to look at the house from a safe distance. What if you're wrong? What if it's the wrong address? What if it's her, and she knew but didn't look for you? These thoughts were like flies. She couldn't shake them off. They just buzzed around in her head. She sat down again. She took off her scarf and wiped her forehead. She took out the photo, the one where she was 4 years old, with pigtails and a paper snowflake in her hand. That photo was all she had left from that life. Not a single one with her sister, not a single one with her mother. Her fingers trembled. Her bag felt as heavy as a rock. If I go there, everything will change. Either I'll destroy myself, or I'll start living. But if I don't go, everything will stay the same, and I can make up any story I want. She fell silent. Then she smiled. I'm good at making things up. But can you live? She stood up. She took a step toward the gate, then back. Another step. Back again. And so on several times, as if she were measuring her own determination, like a dress in front of a mirror. Does it fit? And then she heard a hoarse voice behind her. That's the 5th time you've come up to my fence. Are you coming to visit or to steal? Elena turned around and saw her for the first time. The woman was standing on the porch, in a dressing gown, with a cup in her hand. Her face was neither kind nor evil, just tired, as if she too was often overlooked, and everything froze. Elena swallowed. Her throat was so dry it felt like it was filled with dust from old papers in an archive. The woman on the porch put the cup on the railing and crossed her arms. If you're selling something, don't bother. I'll sell whoever you want myself. If you want something, just say so. I don't like riddles. I don't need anything. I'm looking for someone. He might have been here before. Everyone's been here before, the woman snorted. What are we? An archive? Elena took a step forward. Her bag bumped against her thigh as if trying to stop her. Clara. Her name was Clara. She might have lived here as a child. More than 20 years ago, the woman's face hadn't changed. Only her eyes, narrowed, had become harder. Clara, she repeated. You've been looking for a lot of Claras. We had one. But she's not here now, and she won't be. She left. Left. Where? Why do you want to know? Elena stopped. Everything inside her was racing. If she said, I'm her sister, what would happen next? Would they accept her? Hug her? Chase her away? Laugh at her? I just wanted to know. She's a close friend of mine. The woman paused. Then she gestured for her to come closer. Go on, quickly. I have work to do. I don't like people hanging around my porch like cats. Elena climbed the steps. Each board creaked under her feet as if complaining. The woman opened the door. Inside, it smelled of fried onions, soap, and fatigue. The kitchen was like any kitchen in a house where no guests had been expected for a long time. A stained towel, a pot with a stuck lid, a radio with a broken antenna. Sit down. Elena sat down, her back straight, her hands clasped in front of her. Who are you? The woman asked. I'm her sister, maybe. We were together as children. But I was taken away. The woman was silent. Then she stood up and took an old box out of the cupboard. The cardboard was falling apart at the seams. Here, there are photos. Maybe you'll recognize someone. Elena leafed through them as if in a dream. Children in the yard, a young woman with a braid, a girl with a doll. Then, Clara. She knew it. It was a face that had once been close to her, maybe only in her memory, but it was hers. That's her. The woman nodded. She was with us, but then she left. She didn't say where. We didn't hold her back. She has a character like granite. She said, I'll find everything myself. I don't need anyone. And she didn't come back? Why should she? Elena lowered her eyes. That was all. Hope had lived for 20 years. But reality was just one evening. Clara had been there. But now she was gone. Did she leave anything behind? An address? A letter? Number only this. The woman handed her another photograph. Clara was grown up now. She was looking straight at the camera. Her lips were pressed together. Her eyes were empty. A learned emptiness. The same emptiness Elena saw in the mirror. She took the photo, thanked the woman, got up. The woman walked her to the door. You're not the first person to look for her, but you're the first who didn't ask for forgiveness. You don't have to. I didn't abandon her. They looked at each other for a long time. Then the door closed. Without a click. It just closed, and Elena was left alone, with the photo in her palm, with a face that had finally taken shape, and with the realization that there was no going back. Now there was only forward, even if she didn't know where. Returning to the house, which smelled of tobacco and unsweetened coffee, Elena did not enter right away. She stood at the threshold. The lamp above the door swayed in the wind, as if wavering with her, to go in or leave forever. She had already crossed the line, but she didn't know why. The door was unlocked. Inside, there was a dim light, the crackling of the radio and the rustling of papers. The old man sat at the table, squinting through his glasses. He didn't turn around. You're late, he said. Elena went inside. She took off her coat. She carefully placed the photograph on the table, like evidence, like proof, like a farewell. I found it, she said simply. He nodded. Not the one, right? Yes. But it's like it's not the one. Yeah. She sat down opposite him. She reached for the cup, which had already grown cold. She doesn't remember me. Or rather, she doesn't want to remember. Or she's pretending. It doesn't matter. I'm nobody there. The old man closed the notebook. He took some nuts out of the drawer, cracked one open, as if they were talking about the weather, not someone else's pain. So what? What do you mean, so what? You're not a piece of paper. You're not a line in an archive. Even if she doesn't remember you, you're alive. And that's a lot. Elena sighed. Why aren't you sleeping? I'm afraid. When I sleep, I see those who are gone. When I'm awake, at least I can decide who to remember. She smiled. That's fair. He handed her the glass, without a word. She took a sip. The bitterness burned her throat. You know, he said, I once had a daughter. Not like you. Completely different. Sharp, loud. Knew everything. Then she left. Far away. Didn't say goodbye. He spoke slowly, as if pulling the words out of a drawer that hadn't been cleaned out in a long time. I waited. I wrote. Then I stopped. I don't think she wants it. And I got tired of it. He looked at Elena. And then you showed up. I'm not her. I'm not looking for her. Sometimes people come back different from how you expected them to be. Elena didn't know what to say. It wasn't a confession. It wasn't a confession. It was like touching a scar, not to tear it open, but to make sure it was still there. They were silent for a long time. He cracked nuts. She stroked the photograph as if she could rub the alienation out of it. And then she said, What if I don't find anything else? No sister, no family, no truth. What then? He shrugged. Then you have tomorrow, and eggs, and tea, and a roof over your head. Then he added, Sometimes family is the people who don't leave when you have nothing to give. Elena looked at him, and for the first time didn't see an old man. She saw a man who also had photographs, shadows, and open doors. Thank you, she said quietly. He grunted. You already said that. Say it again when I ask you for some soup. Elena smiled. For the first time, there was no pain, and that night, she slept. Not because she was tired, but because for the first time, she didn't feel like a stranger. The next few days passed, not like days, but like tea in a large mug. Bitter, with a residue, but warming. Elena didn't leave. She didn't ask if she could stay. And the old man didn't say, stay. She just washed the cups in the morning, wiped the table with an old towel, listened to him read the newspaper, curse at officials, and people who write without commas. You have a housewife's voice, he said once, like the women who used to ride on old trains. Tea, pies, boiled eggs. I respected them. None of them ever complained, even if they burned themselves with boiling water. Elena laughed. She laughed for real, so hard that her cheeks ached. And your voice sounds like you're going to war, even when you say, pass the salt. That's how I walk, every day, to the kitchen. She helped clean the pantry, sort through old documents, and found a jar of buttons, each of which, according to the old man, knew more than half of the bosses. Sometimes they looked at old photographs together. He showed her his wife, silently, and only once said, she smelled like warm dough. Even when she was angry. Elena found herself looking at the clock more and more often, not to leave, but to remember to put the kettle on before he came home. She went to the store downstairs, haggled with the saleswoman over fish, gave the last piece of bread to the cat that came to the porch, even if it scratched her. Sometimes in the evenings, they sat by the window, drank chamomile tea, and said nothing. The silence was warm, not oppressive, and everything would have been fine. But something inside Elena wouldn't let her rest. The old man began to cough more often. He blamed it on the weather, on his old bronchitis, on the stupid fashion of going out without a scarf. But it wasn't that kind of cough. It came from deep inside. And when he climbed the stairs from the basement, Elena noticed how he held onto the railing for too long. How, after entering the room, he pretended he had simply tripped over his memories. Have you been to the hospital? Yeah. Once, when my wife was giving birth. I'm serious. I'm old. That's all. End of discussion. She tried not to insist, but one day, when he fell asleep in his chair, she saw his hands, blue at the joints, with veins like roads on a map of old age, and she was frightened, because it turned out she had gotten used to it, not to caring. To him. One day, a neighbor came into the store, a woman in a green jacket with a face that looked like it wanted to complain. She looked at Elena with narrowed eyes. Who are you to him? A relative? Elena opened her mouth and didn't know what to say. I'm just... Oh, I see, the neighbor snapped. There are a lot of just people like you these days. You stick around, then you sign papers. I don't need any papers. Not yet. And she left, leaving behind a scent of distrust like cheap perfume. Elena stood at the stove for a long time, holding a ladle, not knowing why. This woman was unpleasant, yes, but not entirely wrong. She herself didn't know who she was here. The next day, she approached the door of the house where Clara lived again, with a photo in her hands, and with a question that wouldn't leave her alone. But she didn't dare knock. She turned around, returned to the old man. If I say I want to stay, he didn't look up from his book. Stay. Just don't ask. Just live. And she stayed. But inside, a storm was brewing. Because when you find something alive, you're afraid of losing it. That morning, she woke up to the sound of footsteps. Not his footsteps. These were unfamiliar, businesslike, dry like the heels of officials. Elena sat up in bed, her hair tousled, her heart beating faster than usual. Through the half-open door, she could see the old man talking to someone in the hallway. The other man's voice was even, with a hint of tired irritation. We need to sign some papers. He hasn't shown up at the hospital. He's broken his orders. We have no other choice. Elena went out. A man in a brown coat was holding a yellow folder and something that looked like a referral. Who are you? He asked casually, almost mechanically. I live here, she said. He's like a father to me. The old man grunted from his chair. The girl doesn't know how to lie. That's a compliment. Then, tiredly, turning to the official. What do you want? An examination. Yesterday's test results show that we can't delay. We'll send a car. We need your consent. We don't need a car, he snapped. I'll get there myself. Walking isn't an option. I'm not falling apart. You are, said the official calmly. And you have been for a long time. He left the paper on the table and left. Elena stood in the doorway. She didn't know what was scarier, what was happening, or the fact that the old man was pretending that nothing was happening. Why didn't you tell me? Why should I? Are you a doctor? You're alive. I'm dying. We live in different worlds. She sank down onto a stool. Her hands were shaking. I don't want to lose you. Your box of losses is overflowing, isn't it? He didn't sound angry, just truthful. I'm used to it. You're not. So it's not too early. It's time to learn. Elena wanted to reply, but at that moment someone knocked again. This time quietly, almost apologetically. A girl was standing at the door. She was young, with pigtails and a frightened look. Are you Elena? Yes. This is for you. A letter. It was left at the house where Clara used to live. I'm her niece." She left. But before she left, she said if anyone came looking for her. She fell silent, handed over the envelope, and quickly left, as if afraid of being drawn into someone else's pain. Elena stared at the paper in her hands. The handwriting was uneven, as if written on a train in a hurry. The words began with her name. But then came the words that pierced her most deeply. "I don't want you to look for me. I don't need you. We are strangers. We are connected by blood, but not by fate. Please forget me. I'll be better off that way." She didn't cry. She just stared at the letters. And suddenly she realized this was the end. Not a scene, not a prologue, but a wall she couldn't get through. The old man read silently. He didn't ask what was in the letter. He just walked over, took the paper from her hands, tore it up, and threw it into the stove. "Now you have a home. Leave your sister to those who believe in coincidences. You believe in yourself." The fire licked the edge of the letter. It caught quickly, like everything that was dear but unnecessary. And then Elena understood. The past was closed. Now there was only forward. But forward didn't mean easier, because after words like that, something inside a person dies, and something else awakens. The house began to shrink, not physically. No. It was just that the air inside became heavy, as if the walls knew something and didn't want to say it. The old man didn't go outside anymore. In the morning, he coughed for a long time, with pauses in his breathing, and then he just sat there, staring out the window. Elena cooked soups, dusted, looked for ways to entertain him, but he just shook his head. "Do you think I'm dying of boredom?" "Number of time. And you can't argue with time." She tried to joke. She said he was just being lazy. He smiled, but more and more often with only his eyes. His body seemed tired even of words. And outside the window, life went on. The neighbor in the green jacket was now passing by more often. Sometimes she stopped at the gate. Once she called out, "Miss, can I talk to you for a minute?" Elena went out. The woman was holding some kind of brochure and looking at her with feigned concern. "I was thinking, you're not related, are you? Why do you want to know?" "Well, you never know. Just rumors. They say he's transferring his apartment to you." "He's not transferring anything. We live together." "Just live together." That's what everyone says these days. Then they split it up in court. "What do you want?" The neighbor pressed the brochure to her chest like a shield. "I just think an old man needs to be looked after. He's not thinking straight anymore, is he?" Something ignited in Elena's chest. It wasn't anger. Anger would have been easier to understand. It was a shy, sticky rage. It was as if someone had questioned her life again. "He has a clearer mind than you," she said, "and a cleaner conscience." She turned and left. The door slammed shut. The old man watched her from the room. "Why did you talk to her?" "Because I'm tired of it. Everyone thinks that if I don't say anything, they can walk all over me." He nodded slowly. Silence is not weakness, but shouting is not always strength. The next day, someone from the administration came. They brought papers. They demanded proof of kinship or guardianship, politely but insistently. "If he lives with you, there must be documents. Otherwise, you have no right to make decisions." Elena looked up, as if searching the ceiling for a law that would protect her. But there were only cracks. The old man refused to talk. He just muttered, "When everything is registered, the most important thing is lost. You can't put life on paper. It just happens." But they left the papers, and the deadlines, and the warning. "We're not threatening you. We're just doing our job. Those are our rules." Elena looked at those rules as if they were a noose. She had nothing that gave her the right to be there. Only memories, and soup, and fear. And at night, he had an attack. Not a strong one, but she heard him cough, heard the stool fall. She rushed over. He was sitting on the floor, pale, his eyes closed. "It's okay," he croaked. "The world just wanted to remind me who's boss." She helped him up. Her hands were shaking. Then she held him by the shoulders for a long time, until he was breathing evenly. Then she said, "If anything happens to you, He interrupted her. "If anything happens to me, you will live." That is gratitude. But she didn't want gratitude. She wanted him. And at that moment, the world became quieter. Like before a storm, the morning did not begin with coughing, nor with the smell of coffee, but with silence. The kind of silence in which you can hear every creak of the floorboards, every click of the window frame from the draft. Elena went out into the hallway. The smell of iodine hit her nose. It never smelled like that here. The old man was sitting in his coat on a stool, his hands folded in his lap, his lips a straight line. A car was parked nearby. Not an ambulance, an administrative vehicle with unmemorable license plates. 2 people got out. Not doctors, social workers, or someone like that. "You said you wouldn't leave," Elena whispered. "And you said you knew how to forgive," he replied. "So now it's time for you to keep your word." She sat down next to him, her fingers dug into his sleeve. "I can go with you." "You can't. The papers won't allow it. People won't allow it. And you have to stay." "For what?" He looked at her the way people look at you when they know this is how it's going to be. "So you don't break." He placed his hand on hers. "You didn't find me so that I could be. You found me so that you could be." She didn't understand those words, or didn't want to. She just nodded, like people nod at a coffin, not because they agree, but because they don't have the strength to argue. The car drove away. Slowly, without a siren, only a trail on the road, like the trail of a wound that no one had stitched up. The house grew cold. Elena walked through the rooms. She rearranged the cups, folded the towel, wiped the table, put the kettle on, and sat down. Just sat down, without a goal, without a plan. An old handkerchief lay on the floor. His. She picked it up. It smelled of tobacco. Still warm, as if he were still there, in the armchair, with his hoarse voice, with those silly sayings that made her fall in love with him. Fall in love. There it is, the word. And now, no one. The neighbor didn't come. Thank God. She would have said something appropriate, that these things happen. He lived a good life. You're young. You'll find someone else. But she didn't want to find someone else. She wanted him back. She walked over to the table where he kept his papers. She opened the drawer. She found everything he had left behind. Bills, letters, photos. Not a single document that would make her his. She didn't exist. Not in the records, not in their memories. Only in his gaze, which was no longer there. And then, not right away, she allowed herself to break down. She didn't cry. She just curled up in the chair like a child and lay there. The clock ticked. Day turned into evening. The house grew dark. She didn't turn on the lights. If anyone had looked in, they would have seen emptiness. A girl, a bag, a photo, and silence in which there was no longer a voice, no cough, no life. And at that moment, she felt it. This was it. The bottom. From there, it could only go up. Or down. But he wouldn't allow the latter. Night fell on the house, Not softly like a warm blanket, but abruptly. It was as if someone had turned off the light inside Elena herself. She sat on the floor for a long time, leaning her back against the wall, a handkerchief in her hands. It was strong, washed, smelling of the person who had worn it. It didn't smell of perfume or cream. It smelled of real life. Sweat, tobacco, dust from the papers he had rummaged through every night. It was all there, and it was all disappearing. The clock ticked in the room. It seemed to be mocking her, loud, clear, rhythmic, reminding her that time was passing, and he was already gone. She didn't turn on the light. She didn't make dinner. She didn't make tea. She just sat and thought. "Who am I now?" she asked aloud. Her voice broke. Her sister was gone. Her parents, who had abandoned her, had disappeared when she was a child, like a mirage. He had been her island, her haven, even if only for a short time. And now, there was emptiness again. What was I? A guest? A temporary consolation? Or did he really? She didn't finish. And then a memory came back to her. Not a vivid one, not cinematic, just simple. How he once, seeing her straighten the tablecloth, said, "Now, my house is in order. Before, we just lived here. But with you, we live." He didn't mean anything by it. He just said it. And she walked past, not hearing him. Now she remembered. They were living. And she began to talk to herself, not to complain, so as not to fall silent completely. "I'm not weak," that's what they thought. They didn't know that I had kept Clara's name all my life, that I clung to an old photograph as if it were my passport, that I came anyway, without knowing who I was. She talked and talked, quietly, without drama, simply, as if she were learning to breathe again. No one needed to look for me. I was here. I was here all this time, just unwanted. And then, a pause. Not from pain, from exhaustion. And then, insight. Not in words, in emptiness. If no one calls you home, it means you have to build it yourself. A home is not walls. A home is someone who is happy when you walk in. It's a bowl of soup. It's what she did for him. And now, suddenly, it turned out to be more important than any papers. She walked over to his desk. She sat down. She ran her hand over the wood. She opened a drawer. There was a photo of him, with her. Someone she knew had taken it with an old camera when she was laughing and he was complaining about stupid needles in the pie. He had kept that photo. She took it in her hands. She pressed it to her chest. So she was mine. Then, for the first time in many years, she didn't feel like an orphan. Not because someone had confirmed it, but because she saw that her love was real, her care was real. And that meant she was alive too. She lay down, not on the bed, but directly on the floor, under the blanket he called soldier's blanket. And she fell asleep, without thoughts, without fear, because now she had something she didn't have before, the knowledge that she could be a home, all by herself. Morning came without announcements, without much light. Just the air was different, as if the night had burned out and left behind a clear, fragile day. Elena woke up not to a sound, to the feeling that it was time. Everything in the house was the same. Silence, an unwashed cup, a slightly open window, and even the socks by the radiator. Everything was just like yesterday. Only inside her something had shifted. It wasn't easier. It just wasn't so painful anymore. The pain remained, but it didn't burn. It breathed with her. Elena put on her coat. Not the one she had been hiding in. The one that hung by the door. Worn, but comfortable. She took a different bag. In the one where the piece of paper with Clara's name had been, she now put the photographs. 2. One from the archive. The second one with him. She didn't know exactly where she was going. She just left. She walked through streets that seemed different, although they were the same houses, the same creaking of snow, the same smell of coal and damp wood. Only now she wasn't looking for a place to hide. She looked ahead, as if for the first time in many years, she didn't need to prove that she existed. At the bus stop, near a bench, she saw a girl. Young. In that same green jacket. Clara's niece. Elena approached her. "Thank you for the letter," she said. The girl nodded, looking confused. "She didn't say anything nice," she added quietly. "We hardly knew her at all. She was like a stranger." Elena wasn't surprised. She just nodded. She was a stranger to me too. But now it doesn't matter. They stood there in silence, and it wasn't an empty silence. Each of them was remembering someone they couldn't understand, but still wanted to forgive. "Are you staying here?" the girl asked. "Yes. Part of who I became is here. That's enough." Elena walked on. There was a pharmacy on the corner. She went in. She bought the medicine, the ones he hadn't finished. Why? She didn't know. Just because. Then she went to the post office. She sent a letter. To herself. With a note. "I'm alive. I'm doing okay. Thank you for not giving up." And then she went to the depot. Where they had met. Where he had come up to her. The security guard recognized her. The girl. He. She nodded. "He gave me my life. And you. And now I belong to myself." He didn't understand, but he nodded. Elena looked at the schedule board. Times, cities, destinations. They used to be a way out. Now they were options. But she didn't choose any of them, because she wasn't running anymore. She went home. Slowly. Without rushing. She sat down by the window. She took his book. She started reading. Now she wasn't looking for herself in someone else's eyes. She was. She wasn't in a hurry, although she knew she couldn't put it off any longer. The morning was damp. The wind blew in her face as if asking, "Are you sure?" But she walked on, not sure. Just ready. The hospital was on a hill, with white walls, peeling windowsills, and stairs that creaked underfoot like autumn leaves under boots. She held her bag tighter than necessary. Inside was the book he hadn't finished reading, and a photo. The one. The one of her, with him. The receptionist glanced over her glasses. "Who are you here to see?" "Daniel. He was brought in a few days ago. Room 16, the last one." Walking down the corridor was like a memorial procession. Each door was like a door to a different life. Someone was moaning. Someone was laughing. Someone was shouting, "Mom," even though their mother was long gone. The 16th door was ajar. He was lying there. His eyes were closed. His face was like parchment. But he was breathing. That was the main thing. She sat down next to him, silently, for a long time. And then she spoke, in a whisper. Not so that he would wake up, but so that she could finally say it. "You were the first person who saw me, not as a refugee from my childhood, not as a shadow with someone else's name, but as me." Pause. "I don't know who you wanted me to be. Your daughter? A guest? Just a person. But I was. Here. With you. And that's all." She put the photo on the nightstand. Then the book. You always said that life is like a train. I didn't know where I was getting on. But now, I know where to get off. Here. Then, for the first time, she took his hand. It was still warm. Fragile. I'm not asking you to live. I'm just thanking you for being there. He didn't answer, but his fingers moved slightly, not like a farewell, like, I heard you. She sat there for a long time, until the light changed, until it became clear. Everything was over. Then she stood up, not holding back her tears, but not drowning in them either. She just walked, steadily, straight ahead. No one asked her on her way out, "Are you a relative?" And that was fine, because now she didn't have to explain. Down on the bench sat the same security guard from the dopo. He recognized her and stood up. She nodded. "He's free." And she walked away. On the streets, wind, people, breadcrumbs on the asphalt. Everything was the same. But now she didn't need to go anywhere. She knew who she was, not the one they were looking for, but the one who remained. The morning was slow, just like before everything. Coffee boiled in an old kettle. Outside the window, the same cat was fighting with pigeons for crumbs. The room hadn't changed. Not the chair, not the table, not the tablecloth with the stain. Only the air was different. Elena sat at the table, in the same chair, in her hands, the same book. But now she wasn't looking for answers between the lines. She was just reading, word by word. Slowly. As if for the first time, she allowed herself not to rush. There was a photograph on the windowsill, a small frame, a black and white image. Him and her. Not a family on paper, but a family in spirit. In the corner, the kettle whistled. She stood up slowly. Poured. She put 2 cups on the table, just like before. The second one next to her. Empty, just because. And she sat down. She wasn't waiting for anyone. She didn't call anyone. She just was. Outside, someone laughed. Children passed by. A crow cawed. And inside, there was silence. Not a deafening silence. The kind you can live with. Now she didn't ask who she was. She just lived. And that was enough. If this story touched you, write the word home in the comments to show that even strangers can become family. Share how you felt at the end. It's important for us to know who stayed with her until the end.